When Aster was dragged to the Elmheim main house, he already knew this was not going to be a simple family meeting. The elders had called him there to judge him for the chaos he caused. And the moment he stood before them, the tension turned deadly. In front of the entire room, Zennies demanded proof of Heffa's loyalty by ordering him to kill his own son. But instead of bowing his head, Haid chose Aster without hesitation, even if it meant the destruction of his entire house. That was the moment everything changed. With no more reason to stay silent, Aster tore off his shirt and revealed the 7 wings on his back, leaving the elders frozen in shock. The reason this power terrifies everyone is simple. The wing crest is the source of magical power, and no human in hundreds of years has ever possessed 7 wings. That level of power was said to belong only to the Spirit Clan, the very origin of the crest themselves. But how did he get this power? In a harsh, cold place, Aster with a battered body approaches his father in an overwhelming killing intent after claiming that his father sent him into an ambush to get rid of him. The man admits this, calling Aster a wingless one, which is why he has to die to stop bringing ridicule to the House of Elmheim. When talking about the Elmheim family, they're the greatest martial house on the continent, and they're tasked with protecting the royal family. The head of the house is Aster's father, Roderick Elmheim, who is the only one who has 7 wings in the entire kingdom. He once saved Aster, who was left on the brink of death in a snowstorm. And to pay this debt, Aster did everything Rodri asked of him. However, Aster had nothing to repay his father with because he had no wings. The wing crest is basically a proof of one's magical power. And the more wings, the greater the mana, since he was the only one in the ducal house who had no wings. His siblings basically called Aster wingless. Nonetheless, Aster continued taking up the sword to practice every day, hoping that one day his devotion would be rewarded. In the end, he and his squad got sent on a mission that was destined to fail. But he managed to survive the ordeal. Now he is wounded and exhausted, but he holds a grudge against his father, who discarded him. Aster tells Rodri that he believed in him and even followed him, but he stabbed him in the back as a reward. Roderick mocks him, asking him what expectations he as a tool thought he had, and he tells him to leave because he is done using him. However, deep down, Aster is raging with anger, and he dashes toward Rodri with his sword. He hates himself for following Roderick blindly, while calling himself a pathetic idiot. Aster's sword lands on Rodri, but leaves no single scratch. Suddenly, Aster is restrained from behind by a mono sword, and 2 young men appear behind him. One of them cuts off his left arm, while the other cuts off his right leg. Aster screams in pain as he crashes to the ground with blood pouring out of his mouth. It turns out that these 2 are his brothers, and they mock him as he lies motionless in the snow, telling him that he will always remain wingless no matter what happens. They even mock him, telling him that he looked so good while crawling on the ground. Aster punches the ground in frustration, asking Rodri why he bothered rescuing him when he was a baby when he knew he was just going to discard him later on. Rodri bends down to tell Aster that he's getting everything wrong because he never had any use for him in the first place. Rodri mentions that what he needed was the power of the 7 wings that were residing inside Aster. Aster is confused by this, and Rodri adds that his mother was actually pretty useful because she bore the seed that would serve his purposes. After saying this, Rodri walks off, leaving Aster with several questions in his head. He stretches his hand toward Rodri, telling him to tell him everything, but his brothers finish him off with excitement by pushing their swords into his back. As he slowly loses consciousness, Aster questions his purpose if he was only born to die meaninglessly in the first place. Suddenly, everything becomes so warm, and by the time he opens his eyes again, he finds himself in thick snow. He looks around frantically and realizes that he is in a baby's body, leaving him wondering if this body is really his. Sleeping beside him is a dead woman who is clutching him in her arms. Aster uses the power of search to check everywhere, and he realizes that armed men are looking for him and the dead woman. Surprisingly, he hears that they are working for Roderick, and they plan to recover him so that they can return him to Roderick. This immediately jerks back his memory to what he was told about how he was found on a night just like that during a blizzard. It suddenly dawns on Aster that he might have returned to the past. However, he doesn't want to conclude yet, and he figures out that he will confirm this later, but he has to escape first. He knows that staying in the same position would only let him end up in Rodri's hands again. Even though he is a baby, Aster starts crawling through the harsh snow with mana infused in his hands just so he can get away as fast as he can. Even though the weather is harsh and he is already getting tired, Aster has no desire to hold back because he was always crawling in his past life, and he plans to do the same thing to survive no matter what. After crawling so far, he ends up passing out, and moments later he is discovered by Hyford, the head of House Hyfried, who is a Viscount, and his daughter. Hyfried carries Aster in his hands, wondering why there is a baby in such a weird place. Hyfried looks at the trail left in the snow by Aster and realizes just how far he has come, leaving him totally blown away, but at the same time with questions of who Aster is. When Aster finally wakes up, he finds himself being stared at by a bunch of little girls who want to play with him. Aster panics because he can't understand what the actual hell is going on around him, scared of whatever is going on. He jumps off and starts crawling away, but the girls chase after him, telling him to stop. A survival instincts kick in, and he continues crawling, aiming to get away from them. He ends up propelling himself into the sky with his magic, and he soon realizes that he is screwed, as he starts descending to the ground with no way to stop it. Just when he is about to hit the ground and go splash, he is caught by the Viscount, who teases him for being a mysterious child. Sweat runs down his face with the realization that he almost died. Just then, Aster takes a look at the man, and this is when he realizes that he is in the hands of Hyford, the Viscount of the Roderick domain. Aster freaks out, because there is no way in the world he just found himself in another Elmheim house. Basically, Hyford is the head of the Viscount family, which is a branch of the Elmheim family. He was one of the two wings that were once entrusted with protecting the royal family. However, Aster is even more confused because Hyfrid should have died in some trash civil war, which ended in the total collapse of the Viscount family. This basically confirms his fear that he's gone back to the past. However, he is left in utter shambles because he was trying to run away from Rodri and ended up in his brother's hands. Hyford's wife also carries Aster in her arms, talking about how surprised she is that Aster's magic went out of control to launch him into the sky. The woman figures out that Aster was trying to escape because he was scared, and she kisses him on the forehead to show him that he is in good hands. The woman strokes his cheeks, causing Aster to relax. Hyf then tells his wife that Aster possesses tremendous power, and the crest on his back is proof of that. The woman takes Aster to the mirror to check out the crest on his back, and they are blown away to see that it is 7 wings. Even Aster is surprised that he has the crest of 7 wings on his body. This is when he remembers what Roderick told him before he was killed. Aster finally figures out that the dude basically saved him so he could take the 7 wings for himself. Aster is even more pissed when he realizes this, because he was called a freaking wingless all through his past life, just because Rodri stole what was his. Hyf's wife then asks him what he plans to do with the child. The moment Aster hears this, he freaks out because he is not about to let the power fall into the Elmheim family, since he needs it to get revenge on Roderick. Shockingly, Hyford tells his wife that they should adopt Aster because he is still a young one who can't fly on their own. Hyf mentions that he will take responsibility until Aster is able to take care of himself. Just then, the room's door opens and the girls crash on the floor, revealing that they have been listening all this time. The girls admit that they were curious because they were worried about Aster. The girls let off a bright smile because they finally have a baby brother. The woman of the house then gives him the name Aster. 10 years after this, Hyfried Aster and one of his sisters, Alphen, head to the Sword Dance Assembly, which is held annually by a certain Duke family under the Elmheim umbrella. It is basically a social gathering for martial arts noble families, and it is a place for nobles to deepen their faith while showing off the strength of swordsman candidates who carry the family name. The moment Hyfried and his children arrive at the location, the other nobles and spectators waste no time as they start whispering. The people make fun of the Viscount family, saying they have come to embarrass themselves again. They also know about Aster, who was adopted into the family because they couldn't produce an heir of their own. They are pissed at just how much disgrace the Viscount family has brought to the Elmheim family. Alphen can hear everything they are saying behind their backs, and she urges Aster to stay strong and not let any of it get to him. Alphen tells Aster that whoever shows weakness is crushed, and while saying this, Aster can see her hands trembling from anger. Hyft also tells Aster that what he is currently seeing is the current position of the Viscount family. Hyft tells him that this is what he wanted to show him, and he asks him if he is disappointed by everything he has witnessed. However, Aster assures his father that he is fine with being in such a hostile environment. Hyft laughs out loud when he hears this, telling Aster that his stance is quite reassuring. Apparently, in his past life, Aster made his debut in the social society as a disgrace to the Elmheim family, which is why there holds bitter memories. However, he is now a totally different person because the Seven Wings have returned. Aster looks up to see his past brothers who killed him staring at him from the window, and Aster is ultimately eager to make a glorious social debut. They are in an era where knights ruled, and might was the mastery of the blade, which was the absolute pinnacle of swordsmanship. Basically, the absolute symbol that embodied everything was none other than the wing crest. Standing on a balcony to watch the duels, Alphen talks about how overwhelming everything is. Alphen finally realizes why Furine and Flare were not interested in coming. Aster, on the other hand, can't forget how he was embarrassed during the whole thing in his past life. Alphen notices that he is lost in thought, and she calls his name to jerk him back to reality, asking if he is nervous. Alf doesn't blame him if he is nervous because it is his first sword dance festival. Aster assures her that he is not nervous, but feels nostalgic instead. In fact, everything is Lotholm to him. Hythe then tells the kids that he has to leave because he has a meeting he needs to attend. Hythe tells